What's up, guys? It's Minx, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about stealing storage from Discord. I thought this was a really cool video. I had skipped over it for months. It came out 5 months ago, and I just watched it a couple of days ago, but I've known about it for a while. And I really liked the video. I thought it was pretty good. It was definitely a solid video. The editing was pretty good, as well as what was covered. Definitely not a knock against Dev Detour. When I say there are some improvements I'd like to make to how this went, or how we went about these things. And yeah, so that's gonna be kind of the topic of today's video. Again, I want to say there's no real direction here. We're just gonna cover what I've worked on, and there's gonna be some differences between what he did and what I did, and which I think is the only reason I'm actually wanting to make this is because I think it's important to cover those. And finally, although he didn't release his code, I'm going to be releasing my code. In fact, it's already out on GitHub. What I have made, it's not good by any means. It's rushed over the past 6 hours code because I wanted to. I thought it would be a fun project, so I went full swing. But it's probably messy. Well, it is messy, not probably. And yeah, that doesn't mean I share different opinions on the outcome here, though. This is not something you should use as a main file storage thing. Uh, I did do some reading and look through the comments as well as the actual like Discord terms of service here. And yeah, you could have your stuff deleted if they don't, for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter. If they want to delete your stuff, you could have it deleted. So this isn't really ideal for that. It is good for learning, and that's the reason I actually want to release the code is his idea was don't release it because people shouldn't be using it, and mine is release it so people can learn from it. So that's what we're going to be looking at today is the code. We're not going to be doing a full tutorial or anything like that, so hopefully this video isn't too duper long. And then we'll kind of show it off. And yeah, so once again, not a knock against Dev Detour. This was a really good video. I really liked it. In fact, the editing is probably going to be way better than mine, considering mine has little to no editing. And yeah, so let's get into it. Let's take a look at everything. So let me bring out my paint. I've got a couple things going on here already from like a previous thing I was looking at, but we're going to kind of cover really the primary differences and the reason for the differences. So his was done in JavaScript using Node.js server, which kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. Not because Node.js is bad or anything. I just don't think that was the right choice for what the idea was here. My idea is more like FileZilla with like FTP, for example, where you just go direct with the server, and his seemed to have a middleman. And I think that is kind of where our differences are here. The main differences that kind of changed everything about how these work. So at the end of the day, what's going on here? So we're taking our computer, we have one file that is of variable size, could be greater than 25 MB, sending it over to Discord. And along the way, it gets broken up into little pieces that Discord will take. And then in this case, as of right now, he's got it encrypted. We'll put that here, ENC, man, ENC. I didn't do anything with encryption just yet. It's more of going to be an afterthought. And when I say it's an afterthought, I mean, it's not necessary to do upfront for testing. It just gets in the way, it causes issues because it could make things more difficult to troubleshoot while technically working on it. But things will be encrypted. Now, the difference between us is where these things happen. So in his case, if we bring out a second one, he sends one file over from his computer to a server. Boop, 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 boop. And the server breaks up the files into their respective pieces and then sends those over to Discord. And yeah, so this is good. It's not too bad. If the server isn't local, then we've got a problem with network latency potentially. Even if you have good network, good internet, you have two paths to take to get to the correct server. And then you also, I know we're not too worried about this happening, but since we brought up security as a result for the encryption, you know, we have the possibility of being intercepted. We're sending a file over unencrypted potentially, and it could be taken here instead of, you know, on Discord where we were expecting. Not sitting here being a pen tester or anything, but if we're worried about it, we're going to take it back to the client machine here. So, how do we fix these things? The other issue was potentially doing these operations on a server where things could be potentially delayed or slowed down. Not too much of a worry, you know, but if it's a concern, we want to take everything back. So, and my theory, or my solution, was run everything on the client machine. Now we're processing everything through a Discord bot, so this didn't come just easily. So we have the file on the machine. This part was easy. Break the file up into little pieces and send those pieces directly over to Discord. No middleman needed. Send it directly over. Everything happens on the machine. And then the only other part to this that is a concern is encryption. Encryption would handle also be handled client side before the pieces are made. So you encrypt the original file, split them up, send them over to Discord, and then in that exact same order, you retrieve them. You retrieve the pieces, put them back in the same order, and then decrypt that remaining piece. All client side, at least on the piecing together and encryption and decryption. So that covers all of my concerns that I had, as well as potentially increasing speed. I don't want to say too much on that because, you know, it really depends, as well as if the Node.js server was handled on this local machine, then you didn't have too much of an issue there. But yeah, so those are the real main differences. There is one other potential difference. Now, this difference isn't too big of a deal, but it could potentially be, and that's where the metadata is stored on these files. So when you put these files somewhere, you know, you have your original file and then you have the two pieces. You have to tell the system that these two pieces are in this particular order and that they are for one file. Otherwise, you know, when you go to download it again, you don't know, or the system isn't going to know automatically what file goes where to make who with the what now. So we have to also store some metadata. That can be stored in one of two places. It can be stored on the client machine or on the server. I thought it might be a good idea to do a redundancy check for this and do it on both, where what you do is when you boot it up, firstly, you check to see if the server has metadata. You try and parse that metadata. If everything is good, then you use that metadata and you update your local metadata. If there's something wrong with it, means it doesn't have it, or there's something wrong with it, you create a new metadata, you use your client metadata, then you get it uploaded to the server. So if something happens to the server while the client's offline, then the client will fix it. If something happens to the client, the server still has everything. If something happens to both, well, we're screwed. And in this case, this is why we don't use that for this type of thing. The final thing to consider here is, there was one final thing. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe we'll circle back to it. So ultimately that covers everything. So let's move into actually looking at some code. Again, we're not going to be doing a full tutorial, but I think there's some interesting stuff to cover. And it's really, this was one of the main ones. So processing a large file. So when actually not even this, like this is interesting, but it's not the most interesting piece. It's a lot of technical mumbo jumbo. One of the most interesting things was making a bot to work, or a Discord bot that runs asynchronously to work with a Windows Forms app. 99% of the time when you learn how to make a bot for Discord, since it's asynchronous, you learn on a console app. You don't learn how to do it on something like this because firstly, there's almost 99.9% of the time, there's really no reason to. Like the server owner, the bot owner, if you want to interface with your bot, you either have like a web interface, or you just interface directly with a console or something like that. This is not a common use case for the bot, so there's not a lot going on about it. You just need to learn general async code and learn how to use it with synchronous code. And there's a couple nuances to it. Firstly, when you run async code in a non-asynchronous function, The asynchronous code will run within itself asynchronously. However, the synchronous code around it is not going to wait for it. So you need to consider that when you make synchronous code. And when you have a Windows Forms app or a GUI and everything happens on that thread, asynchronous code like that can either be really good to allow the thread to run while something asynchronous occurs, or if you have something to block it, you may end up freezing up your user interface. So if it's used improperly, you can cause issues. If it's used properly, then you can get some benefits out of it. And in this case, we have some places where it's weirdly used, like this right off the bat. We're using a discard token to initialize the bot in what is seemingly an asynchronous way. However, the system doesn't wait for that to occur. The bot is created properly, and it's by the time it gets to actually running the application, it's got the reference it needs. But that is a that was a bit of a just right off the bat something weird going on. Moving on to the actual forum where some stuff happens, nothing too crazy. This is where the first interesting thing happens. So processing files, there's not much to it, like from like a beyond just saying we read the file in 25 megabyte chunks and created copies of it and then sent those copies over to the bot to be uploaded. That's really all this is. Getting to the lines of code would be more of a tutorial thing, so we're not going to get into it beyond that. And then otherwise, it's got the beginnings of a file system structure. There's not much else to that either. It's you request the directories from a specific directory, the subdirectories and files, and then it displays them. And then as of right now, you can't do anything with them or move, but in the future, you can either delete, download, or add new things to it. Moving on to the bot. This is where the magic happens. More than I think should be in here is in here. The bot handles everything for the most part, except for the actual UI. So it interfaces with the server. It handles client-side metadata and server-side metadata. I guess it is not. I mean, it's just doing a lot of stuff, so it's a little weird. So we'll kind of go down the path of uploading large files since we started there. Again, it just gets a list of the different files and then uploads them. It creates references and adds them to the current directory since we're uploading them to where we are. It's like if I can ring up my debug here, if I were to drag a file from, let's see here, it's essentially saying put this file here in this directory. Boom, done. Not super fun. Yeah, so we're going to keep going. And then the metadata is super interesting. So the metadata works in this way. If we bring up the paint, my paint's gone. You have client side metadata and then server side. So it firstly checks for metadata on the server side. So metadata, if yes, wow. Download it. Actually, not even just straight up download it. Is it good? Good metadata? So does it, is it corrupted? Does it allow you to parse it and find out all the information about the files? Awesome. Download it. Download. Is it bad or missing? Find the metadata on the client. Metadata? Yes, upload it. Send a copy to the server. Say, hey, we don't have metadata, or if we do, it's garbage. Upload your copy. We'll take that. We'll see if that works. If that's good, awesome. We've just recovered. If it's not, you're screwed. And that's why we don't use Discord for this. That's exactly why we don't use Discord for this. So we've kind of covered that for there. We've covered metadata. Let's actually take a look at this in action. So I've got my Discord thing here. It's not fully set up yet, so not everything's done. So I'm going to run this, for example, and I can drag and drop files in here. I can't download. I can upload a bunch of files, but I won't be able to download them all. So it's immediately noticed we don't have metadata. It's created its metadata ID reference, and we'll actually see this change in real time here. So right now we see there's nothing. It's got a couple test folders that I've made. So if I hit like new folder, that's my refresh button technically right now. It's got a couple test folders. We can't go into them or anything, but they exist. And ultimately, they're not even really directories right now. They're just, I mean, they can store files and things like that, but otherwise there's nothing special about them. So let's go ahead and I'm going to drag, since I know test video is over 25 megabytes, and in our form, my new folder button, that's the button 4, has the ability to download test video. So when we upload test video, it's going to retain that name. We're going to be able to use that for the test. So let's go ahead and upload test video. Small bug, we're not going to see it refresh here. We're going to have to hit the new folder button again, but we'll be able to see that pop up on Discord here. Give that a couple seconds. So I think we got one more file or two more files maybe. Okay. Then we see it updated metadata. So one of the cool things about this metadata thing is now it doesn't go back in the audit log yet. I don't know if I'll ever care enough to do that, to be completely honest. But what it does is instead of like editing the current metadata file, I mean, that's technically what it does, but instead of like using the one on the server, it creates a new one, and then it tells the original message saying, hey, here's our new metadata ID. Use this to reference where the metadata currently is. And yeah, so it is now here, but we also have a log of the history. So not only can we see the changes, we have access to them, and if they were valid, we may be able to go back and restore from those. So we also have that. But now we can see it looks like it's got some message IDs, it's got the name, and it is in the root because we are in the root directory. If I hit new folder, it shows up. It's basically like right click refresh on something like this. Like if I did this. Now we can go ahead and hit the refresh button to download it. So it printed out a couple things. I don't actually remember where those are from. Let's head to our downloads where that went. I'm gonna refresh here. And test video is the exact name. Let's see if it works. All right, boys, I know it works. We're not gonna go through it. It's just some smoke lineups I did. And then if we go back down to now the videos that we did this with, that's the same video. Cool, it works. So everything's good there. I hope to add a few more things to the file structure thing. So like for example, like a download, delete, maybe a move button. A move would be a little ridiculous. I'm not sure how I'd go about that at the moment. But we're also going to be implementing things like this. So everything's cool there. But yeah, that's it. Again, everything's available on GitHub if you are interested or curious on how everything looks and works. Otherwise, thank you for watching today and have a great rest of your day.